Welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations, your authority in navigating the world of homeschooling diverse learners. Featuring Peggy Ployhar from SPED Homeschool, Annie Yorty from AnnieYorty.com, Leilani Melendez from Living with Eve, Stephanie Buckwalter from eLARP Learning, and Dawn Jackson from Dawn Jackson Educational Consulting and Tutoring. With over 75 years of combined homeschooling expertise, experiences, and perspectives, this group is eager to share their wealth of wisdom to empower your homeschooling journey. So grab your favorite mug, settle in, and get ready for insightful discussions, valuable insights, and practical tips. Give your homeschool the power boost it needs to successfully educate the unique learners in your home.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Today, we are going to talk about nurturing creativity, how parents can empower unique learners at home. And my guest today is Chad Stewart, and Chad Robert Stewart. I want to make sure we make that distinction because I think I looked that up, and there's somebody that's kind of famous that's got your same name. So we want to make sure that to make that distinguishing feature there.
Sure.
He was born in Newport Beach, California, as an award-winning best-selling author, global strategist, and creativity educator. He founded the Britfield Institute, dedicated to creativity and literacy, and Devonfield, a media empire focused on high-quality education, publishing, and film. Formerly an investment banker with Bank of America, Morgan Stanley, and Merrill Lynch, Chad holds degrees from Brown University and Boston College and is currently pursuing advanced studies in strategic innovation. Now based in San Diego, he actively supports education in the arts and has served as a professor and past president of the San Diego Ballet Board. Welcome, Chad, to the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that we're talking about creativity. It's one of my favorite things, it's nice to be focusing on something that so many kids that struggle in certain areas are really, really good at this. And so parents, I want you to hold on to learn some ways that you can encourage your child in this area. And we're going to go beyond just probably the typical conversation because Chad's an expert on this. But what I asked my guests when we first get started is, why are you so passionate about this topic? There's always seems to be a story or something related to that just fuels your passion for this.
Yeah, and I was very fortunate when I grew up. I grew up in Newport Beach, California, and I grew up in a very creative environment, if you will, and I had great parents, great supportive parents and stuff. And we'll use some of these as examples. But I loved, even as a child, I loved the building blocks. And you have this big box, and it's all these different types and shapes of building blocks. And like 2 hours later, I'd create these huge skyscrapers and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
And then I moved out across to a big yard of a neighbor's, and I built my first fort there, and it started out as pieces of wood, and then we framed walls, and we had a second story with skylights. Wow. And just had so much fun with scavenging all this, and then fast forward 5 or 6 years later, and I worked for major developers, and then I actually had my own architectural firm and development company in Massachusetts, and that paid for my education and undergraduate and graduate and everything like that. And it's the ideas going from building blocks to fort to working for a company to, building huge structures and designing and building huge structures. Yeah. And the difference with me is very little in the sense that I just had the environment. I had the building blocks, and we'll talk about this because it is my contention that all children are born creative, which is an actual fact. Creativity is a gift from God. And so all children are born creative. They're all born creative. They're all born with talent. They're all born with unique talents. And yet we're often put into these industrial, socialistic, if you will, public systems, and those were never designed for education, really. And it's really, in my opinion, it's the worst form of education. The only qualification of me being in this classroom is that I'm 12. or 13. You know?
Exactly.
And then it's often, 30 or 40 kids just in one room. And you're wondering why 8 or 9-year-olds are antsy or having a hard time paying attention. Are you kidding me? Kids were born to play and explore and do and think and breathe and travel and do all those things that I think the homeschool model, which I'm a huge supporter of, is the most natural and I think the closest to a perfect type of education for a child. And so to hear that your kids were homeschooled was encouraging, because for me, and I've done a lot of research and then travel, we can talk a little bit about, the tour, the Britfield tour and the Britfield series.
Yeah, absolutely.
The most well-rounded, educated children I have found are homeschooled. And so when someone says, "Hey, I've got a couple homeschool kids that want to meet you," or whatever, I get excited because they're grounded, they're smart, they're articulate, they listen well, they ask good questions, they're intrigued, they're well read, they're well balanced, usually well traveled. I don't mean Europe, but just beach, museums, hikes.
Oh yeah, they get out of their city, even in their neighborhood.
And they're usually 1 to 2 grades ahead of everyone else. And if they're 14 or 15, they're probably already taking college prep courses, if they choose to even go that direction and stuff. And that's wonderful. And that's what I've seen. And that's the average. That's common. They're not necessarily hugely gifted kids, because all kids are gifted. It's tapping those gifts. So
absolutely. Yeah. I wanted to kind of quantify that, because I teach at my studio both homeschool kids and then public school kids, and I see how much faster they go through my curriculum and just how much quicker they catch on to even like physical things. And I'm trying to think of how I can keep a longitudinal study on that, because it just seems to be pretty consistent. So that's interesting that you're seeing the same thing as you're traveling around and seeing different groups of kids. And so be encouraged, parents. Yeah.
We'll dig into it, but I mean, really the only two defining things with a child is their environment and opportunity. And we can talk about some of this, but the whole thing with genetics is mostly bunk science. He's not born with these abilities or this or that. That's all just junk science to foster the psychological or psychiatrist or psychiatry field and so on. And then the medical field, and he needs to be on this or that, or like, are you freaking kidding me? At 8 or 9, he doesn't need to be on anything. He needs a healthy diet, fresh air, and something fun to do with his life. The idea that we only use 10% of our brain, we use our entire brain, And most of these diseases or things that have been defined are all made up, and they're all made up just to sell medication. And you probably talk about that on your show. This isn't that particular show, but I'm just saying, all children are born creative and they're born amazing. And you're wondering why your kids are hitting a roadblock at 9 or 10 or 11 or 12. I'll be honest. My mom was worried about me in 3rd or 4th grade with reading. I just wasn't reading. I wasn't reading up to speed, and part of it was I just
you were a boy though. So yes,
and I was bored. Yeah, and it was really until I got my hands on a phenomenal book, and believe it or not, I guess it was Moby Dick. That's what my mom tells me.
Wow.
And that captured my imagination, and I read it from cover to cover. And then my reading career sort of got into the Hardy Boys and the Mouse and the Motorcycle. I loved that. And James and the Giant Peach. I mean, that lit my world on fire. And it was in 6th grade. It was a wonderful teacher. I went to Crotomar Elementary School, Crotomar, Newport Beach. Wonderful school, wonderful 6th grade teacher, very creative, brilliant, and just allowed you to have the freedom to do things. And we did a lot of different projects and things. And so we were flourishing in that class. And one of the assignments was to write a book, and I think it was worth about 1/3 of your grade. And again, this is before computers, and so it physically had to be written out. But it was like a paragraph and a picture. We're only 12 years old, so they weren't like epic novels. But that's when I found out that you write about what you know and you write about what you love. And at that time, I loved the James Bond movies. This was with like Roger Moore, The Spy Who Loved Me. And so I sat down and I just started to create this story called James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out, my first official book. And I was a 12-year-old secret agent living in Southern England, working for the British government. And I was driving a convertible Ferrari, of course, and because it's my book. And my partner was Jacqueline Smith. This dates me back to Charlie's Angels. So if you remember Jacqueline Smith, she was my partner.
Yep.
Yeah, and I was tasked with finding this villain that was, running loose through Europe, and the chase continued. It was like this fun, if you will, fast paced, with a bit of comic humor to it, story with a final conclusion that ended in Switzerland. And
Wow.
I didn't finish that and think, oh my gosh, I'm going to be a novelist when I grow up. But those seeds were planted. And the thing is, children will never know what they're capable of doing until you give them a chance to do it, until they're exposed to it. You never know what will stick. And I think that's the whole thing. But go on. I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I love that. And that really sets up our conversation really well. So, what specific practices can homeschool parents use then to sustain and grow their child's creativity? Especially if a child is struggling in conventional academic areas and maybe they have a little self-doubt that is creeping into there.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard, but especially for the homeschool, you have the freedom and you're outside of the sort of classroom,
Yeah, and
and
parents can change things like instantly,
yeah,
and make those changes. They don't need somebody's approval or change a a
yeah.
curriculum, take a year
And
to
so
figure that out.
we can talk
Yeah.
about twofold. One is, on one side we'll talk about the creative world, but even on the
Mhm.
academic side, it's just like, not all children are going to excel in mathematics
Absolutely.
or
Yes.
science, and it's either
Mhm.
going to stick. Now, I think it's nice to have a balance. I'm not against it. I think there's an overwhelming push towards mathematics,
Mhm.
from the basics to geometry to all the way up, and it's just like, I mean, why are you learning all this for something that you're never going to do? And again, I
Right.
mean, I was an investment banker. I did engineering and architecture, and I never needed anything beyond basic math. And
Mm.
so unless you're going to be a mathematician, you know,
Right,
so
or
it's just like, I
physicist.
mean, it's great to have the basics, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I wouldn't worry about it. Sometimes getting a tutor is great if you can afford it.
Mhm.
Or there's even college. Sometimes you can go to college and there's master's students that would be willing to do it, or something, for $25 an hour, or something, whatever it is. And
Right.
I had a lot of private tutors when I was younger, more for the sense for me to excel.
Mm.
Instead of doing like a group class or something, I would love the private tutoring and stuff. But I love the one-on-one. But everyone's
Yeah.
different, and you can design it and make the curriculum that fits them. Make it fun, make it interesting, make it exciting.
Mhm.
If it's mathematics, make it relevant. You know what I mean? And maybe there's something they really like, and then bring mathematics into that subject. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
they love shopping. You're like,
Yeah.
how many boxes of cereal? You know what I mean? Or whatever. You know what I mean? Apples and oranges, whatever it
Right, it
is.
goes back to those life skills because, yeah, my middle child, I was like, "This is," I'm hitting my head against a wall. Is it really worth, like, losing him over trying to get this math done? And so, at algebra, we just stopped. We're like, "Okay, personal
Yeah.
finance." That matters more.
Yeah, and again too, you could make it relevant. I mean, you could bring
Mhm.
entrepreneurship into the mathematics and say, if you're
Yeah.
going to start a company,
Mm.
and how much money would you need, or for a marketing budget or something? And you're sitting here saying, "Well, my kid's only 12 years old." Yeah, your kid's 12 years
Yeah.
old. We have programs in the institute that we do that specifically at middle schools. I mean, why
Mm.
wait till your MBA? Are you kidding me? I mean, this whole educational
Right.
thing is so utterly ridiculous, so utterly
Mm.
inflated. 22 years old, they're just graduating with what, $500,000 debt to go do what? I mean, they're not even equipped to do anything.
Work at
And
Walmart.
so, yeah. Um, and so I'm a big proponent about introducing things early, treating them with, you usually get out of people what you put into them, and how you treat people,
Mhm.
and giving them those opportunities. Now, on the creative side, that's a whole nother world. You know what I mean? The thing is, for me, is,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, again, opportunity environment, and creating a creative environment. And maybe, Monday, or maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays is creativity day, and you guys do something
Hmm.
creative.
Mhm.
It could be, and I'm a big proponent of going to the library, have them pick out 2 or 3 books. Maybe every month, you as a parent will study a different country. We're going to study England, and you go pick some neat books out on England, picture books
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Maybe you get a good a Charles Dickens novel if they're reading at that level, or you guys read it
Mhm.
together, or you
Right.
watch Great Expectations movie. And
Mhm.
you bring them into this world, and then next month we're going to France, or every other
Yeah.
month we do something. We're going to Italy, and mentally,
Mhm.
and you watch a cool
Right.
documentary on
Mhm.
Italy, or you watch an Italian film, or you read an Italian author. I'm just giving these as examples of just creating this really
Right.
neat world. If they're interested in painting, you don't need to go out and spend $1,000 on it. Go out and get a cheap easel with a thing and paints, and
Mhm.
say, "Kid, go to work." And look, if they get burned out after 3 weeks and it doesn't stick, Fine. Go on to the next thing. They want
Right.
to play a musical instrument. You don't need to buy it. Rent it. If they get burned out with the trumpet in 3 weeks, then on to the next thing. Maybe it's the guitar or the drum or whatever it is.
Right.
It's just every child is as they're growing, something's going to stick. But by giving them this wonderful environment, choices and opportunities, and I'm not throwing money at it because this stuff is really, really inexpensive to do. The library's free. You know what I mean? And what if every 3 weeks you guys go to the library and then afterwards you go out and grab a burger, or something fun. You know what I mean? Right. Go to the museum. I'm a big proponent of the museum. Most of them are free, or you
absolutely.
can get, admission for nothing. Don't go there for the whole day. That would bore me. Spend an hour at the museum. Focus on 2 rooms. Have your child walk around and say, tell me what is the most interesting thing that you see, and then let's discuss it. And then afterwards, go grab some ice cream. And I'm not trying to anchor it into that, like the food thing, but I'm just saying make it fun, make it exciting for them. It's like, oh yeah, we're going to the museum again. We go there for an hour. It's like, okay, and the kid's independent. You're kind of watching him. They're in one room, and then he gets freedom. He's walking around. He's looking at stuff. He's reading a little bit and stuff. And it's like, here, mom or dad, check this out. I think this is the most interesting, and this is why I think it's interesting.
Yes, you're allowing them to lead that versus some programmed way to kind of maneuver them through creative exercises, I guess. And you're just allowing those opportunities to lead to their own imagination. And
that is the foundation of creativity. It's not structured per se, although there's rules to it, if you will. But it's the freedom of flow, you know what I mean? And there are no wrong answers. It's like in brainstorming, you know what I mean? There's no wrong answers. And I'm a big proponent of it for many reasons. One is it's the most important skill set in the world, period. This is all based strategically on research and statistics. It's not engineering, which most of that's been offshored already to third world countries, or being replaced with AI or technology. And I'm not a proponent of those either. And I think most of those that are getting all excited about it are just not the useful idiots, if you will. But and it's not mathematics, it's not medical, it's not legal, it's actually creativity. And the thing is too, with societies, and we're such a global world now, connected, something happens in China, we know within 5 seconds, you know what I mean? And things are moving so quickly. What was just invented in Silicon Valley is already obsolete in Hong Kong a month from now. What you really need is you need children, the next generation of the workforce, to be creative, to be able to think for themselves, be critical thinkers, to brainstorm, to look at things from a different angle, to be nimble, to be able to shift when things change. You come out with this degree in one specific finite industry, and then when that shifts in 6 months, you're technically out of a job, because you don't really know how to do anything else. You don't know how to adapt. You're almost panicked in that sense. And so having the ability of creativity and what is creativity, begin, or how do you do it? It's just creative exercises. I mean, for me, it was writing. When I was younger, it was building. I loved building. I loved inventing stuff, and like I said, I gave you the example, from building blocks to a fort, to working for a big development company in Laguna Beach, to starting my own company back east. And for 10 years, I'm putting myself through undergrad and graduate school and traveling the world through it. And so that's one example. And I have many others, but go ahead.
So as you've been talking about this, something's just intrigued me, is that lack of programming. We put kids into, such regimented schedules and programming. There's very little downtime. And so can you talk a little bit about the necessity of that to foster creativity? Because I think a lot of parents think, I'm going to force this thing. And then we get anxious when we see our kids doing nothing, because we think, oh, that's a lack of progress. But I know personally that's not. And so I'd love for you to address that.
Yeah, I think structure is important, structure, rules. And the thing is too, at the end of the day, you're their parents until 18. And so you're like, I don't want to go to the museum. Well, tough. You're going to the museum. No offense. But it's just like, and spend an hour there, because it's like, and I would be the same way at 12. I don't want to go to the museum. That's boring. And then all of a sudden you go there and you're like, wow, that's pretty cool. Or, well, we'll get ice cream afterwards. You know what I mean? Incentive. It's okay.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, after 6 months or something, the museum's kind of played. Okay, do something else. You know what I mean? Go to the marina, walk along the beach, walk along the tide pools, at the lake or the ocean, or plan a trip up into the mountains or something. I mean, it was so wonderful because I was talking with this one homeschool woman. It was an interview I did, I think, a couple months ago or maybe 6 weeks ago, and it was so exciting because their family did everything together, and it's like they were just constantly taking trips, and they weren't big deal trips. They were just trips, and it's just so much fun. I still remember, gosh, it was in 77. I must have been 8 years old. A trip we took to Colorado, and I still remember this hotel we stayed in, and it was so cool. It was at night, and it was like a little bit of the pool was inside, and they have that glass wall.
Yeah.
And you could swim out, and it was just like, I still remember that. And then we went over to the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs, this absolutely stunning hotel, walked around the lake. Yeah. I still remember that. I mean, it's just stuck with me. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, you never know what's going to penetrate and stick with them. And that's why it's so important to give them as many opportunities as you possibly can. You know what I mean? And depending where you live, I mean, you're in Texas, you're in Houston. I mean, I was in Houston. I went to your museum. I mean, there's all kinds of things to see. You can go into the city for a couple of hours and just walk around a couple of streets and look at some of the buildings. And if you have any kind of architectural books or anything like that, you can comment on it, or some old hotel that's classic, and walk inside, look all the antiques and stuff, and have high tea. You don't tell me that 12-year-old girl's going to remember that for the rest of her life. Absolutely. I mean, it's just those kinds of moments, and even shopping can be fun. You know what I mean? To some of the stores, and just, I used to love to do that because part of what we're into also with the Britfield series will be retail and all those products and stuff. So I was always fascinated to see some of these sort of high-end brands and what they were coming out with, or what was the new thing or the new style. And I wouldn't necessarily purchase anything. I just loved looking and exploring and seeing how they were positioning themselves, or what colors they were using, in the promotion, or the font, or, you know what I mean? I mean, all this kind of stuff, depending on what area you're into. Or, I mean, you could have a lot of fun. Oh, what are a couple of those stores? William and Sonoma.
Sonoma. Yes.
Sonoma,
yes. Yeah. All those interesting kitchen gadgets you never knew you needed.
yeah, exactly. That you don't probably really need, but I'm just kind of thinking I'll be headed there this Christmas because they've got some really cool Christmas stuff. But there's just walking around that store is kind of fun and fascinating. Or obviously a toy store. You know what I mean? And going around and exploring in a toy store and looking at games. And believe it or not, the board game market, and I'm talking about the actual physical board game market, is a $2 billion market, growing at 5% every year. Isn't that interesting? Counterintuitive.
It is. My future daughter-in-law, that's what she works in, and
it's
just fascinating because she and my son play a lot of board games, and I'm in for it at Thanksgiving, so I've got to learn all these new games.
We're in development of a Britfield and Lost Crown board game.
That's awesome.
Which is going to be very cool. And it's interesting, as a friend of mine that works for a huge retailer that's in 55,000 schools. They picked Britfield and Lost Crown, book 1 of our series, to be their number 1 middle school book a couple years ago for one of their promotions. And we're like in thousands of schools already. But I was asking about the board game, and that's his area of expertise. And he goes, if you can combine risk and clue, you have a winner. I thought,
yes, top sellers, definitely.
I thought, what a great sort of scenario, as for a board game and stuff. But and then like, have family night, no matter what. And maybe it's Wednesday night, maybe it's Thursday night, maybe it's Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon or Sunday night or something. And then maybe every time it's different. Maybe every time someone shares something. Maybe you're doing a book reading. Maybe you're watching a movie, Sound of Music, one of my favorites. You know what I mean? Or you're playing a board game, and once a month you guys play Monopoly, or you play this, you play that, or whatever it is. And it's spending time together. It's listening to them. It's talking. It's going out with them. It's traveling. When I'm saying traveling, I'm not saying Europe. If you can, fantastic. I mean, I think real quick, just as a sideline, what makes the Britfield series so relevant and so succinct to what we're saying, and it was very specifically designed that 4 of the 7 books are now done. We're launching book 4 in January of next year. We launched book 1, Britfield and Lost Crown, in August 2019. And since then, it's become one of the best-selling books in its category, and one of the most awarded books in children's fiction. But what's great about this book is number one, takes place in present time. So it's not some futuristic post-apocalyptic world. It's real. It's here. It starts up in Yorkshire, England, heads to Oxford, Windsor, London, and then downtown to Canterbury. We include geography, art, architecture, and history. It's based on family, friendship, loyalty, courage, and hope. And we hit the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration. That's what's in every single book. Book 2's in France, book 3's in Italy. And Tom and Sarah, the main characters, in book 1 are 12, in book 2 they're 13, and in book 3 they're 14. And I say that to say that I have had some readers, mostly homeschoolers, that love the series. It's their favorite series. And their parents have now taken them to England. Their parents have now taken them to France or Italy. I surprised a 13-year-old on her birthday at lunch because the parents know some friends of mine. And I said, sure, because they live locally. And I'm like, that'll be fun. And so, and she was like just thrilled. And she had this whole photo album, and it had pictures of France and Italy, places specifically that the Britfield books took place at. And she's like, there's, and it was like, in book 2 in France, that they finally get down to Chambord, which is in the Loire River Valley.
Oh yeah,
that huge castle, right? That looks almost like a city. And there's a
got a little lag in our time here. Hopefully Chad will be back. So we'll wait just a couple seconds. But sorry about that. If you're watching live, if you're not, we'll be just taking this section out. So I know when Chad was talking, I brought back a lot of memories of me taking my kids to antique stores and spending hours and answering their questions as they were asking, what is this? What was that used for? I don't even know it. Then, modern day versions of it. Oh, we lost him for a second here. And so that was always fun to take my kids through antique stores. And another thing, as Chad was talking, I was thinking about how we did adventure dinners at our house once a month. I'd always have, various leftovers in the fridge. And then I would remake it, put a menu together of leftovers. And then we would have different parts of our meal in different rooms of the house with an activity associated with it. And so it was our family adventure meal. So, and the kids got to think up what we were going to do too. So it wasn't just mom setting the programming and mom figuring out the menu. What can you make with all these leftovers? Let's be a little creative and try to get them out and save some money and eat up what's in the fridge. And then we can have something new in there. And also, how can we have a short activity together and have some fun? So, anyways, those were a couple ideas that Chad was he was talking. I was thinking about with my own children, but definitely that creativity. And one other thing that he was stressing was the ability for kids to be able to explore things without a commitment. And I think that's really, really important because a lot of times we're like, oh, you're interested in this, I'm going to sign you up for a class. And then it kind of they do it so much that the love of it gets beat out of them. And instead of just exploring, I found that when I introduced my daughter to sewing, I was super excited that she wanted to sew, and she sewed and sewed. We got her a sewing machine, and then all of a sudden the sewing machine went away. And I was like crushed that she stopped sewing because she was so creative. She was so good at it, so passionate. And then other things had grabbed her attention. It was art. It wasn't very much off from that, but a little bit. And then probably about 7 years later, the sewing machine came out, and she worked on that even more furious than she had before. She was older. She knew exactly what she wanted to make. And she still makes her own clothes now as an adult. So, it just, and if I would have pushed, I think about that. If I would have pushed her sewing and said, oh, but we bought you the sewing machine, so we're going to make our money's worth out of this, and you're going to continue sewing. I don't think she'd be sewing today if I had done that. So some things to think about when you are thinking about how do I spark these things in my children? How do I get them to go beyond where they're at currently, so that they can. Sorry, I think I have a call from our guest. Hello. Are you able to get back on again? Okay. Oh no. Okay, that's okay. I've just been sharing some insight from our conversation already, and I'll look forward to seeing you back online. Okay. All right. Bye. So we should have Chad back soon. But I just want to encourage you, if you have some comments, some questions about the discussion so far, I'd love to have those if you're watching live. I know we're broadcasting right now to Facebook, YouTube, as well as Instagram. And so those are all amazing places where you can watch us live all the time. Also, if you're looking at what's upcoming, who you're going to have on the show in the future, you can go to spedhomeschool.com/calendar, and that has an up-to-date calendar. I'm actually booking right now out into January. So we've got some great conversations coming up in the next couple months, and taking a couple weeks off for Christmas. Oh, talking about Christmas, we are going to have another free event over Christmas. I know we did the back to school yay, and about 80 of you joined us, and we took over homeschooling for the day for you. So we are planning right now on Thursday, December 12th. I haven't set the time yet, but it'll probably be a morning time again. But we're going to have guests on that will teach school for you, and you can just join in the learning with your kids. So we'll have math activities, some kind of therapy type of activity, reading, probably some good Christmas stories, maybe even some music. So we're pulling those guests together right now in that schedule. So watch for that on our social media outlets, as well as our website. Our website has been having issues today, so bear with that. The tabs were not working this morning, so that's another little thing to let you know about. So welcome back.
Back on. I'm so sorry. Wow, I usually have excellent internet, and I got bumped. So apologies.
Oh, that's okay. It happens. Happens to the best of us.
So in conclusion, anyway, I think I was talking about how some of the children have been inspired to travel, and not only travel, but travel outside the U.S. And I think that's what's kind of exciting about it, the impact that it's made. And even kids right now that might be reading Whitfield Lost Crown at 12, England and this whole thing. And, who knows, 18 years old, 19, 20, so they decide to spend a week in London or travel, because of it. You're planting those seeds that there is a bigger world outside their town or their city. So
right. Yeah. We've had the opportunity to travel a lot with our children, mostly in the country, but we've taken a lot of cruises with our kids. And then we do my son and I went on a foodie tour when we were in Cartagena, Colombia. And we went with the same lady that toured Anthony Bourdain. And so she's the one who did his tour. And we ate so much food that day. I think they rolled me back on the ship. But we took advantage of a lot of those things with our kids when they were younger. And I was explaining to the audience too, as you were talking, some of the things that came up when you were talking was I would go to antique stores with my kids. That was one of the most fascinating places to spend time with them, because you'd be able to talk about history without a book, and how people used things that aren't even manufactured anymore. What was this for? So that was always fascinating. But
I love that. I worked at an antique dealer in Laguna Beach. I grew up, and so I learned the trade somewhat. And we're talking talking $500,000 pieces in some cases, but in other cases just fun old stuff.
Right.
Great. And when you're saying that, I'm thinking, what if you were to watch Antique Roadshow with them once a week, and you guys have fun?
Absolutely.
You guys have fun, like betting, or like it's a contest, and
right. What's the value?
What's the value? And just having fun with it, you know what I mean? But guess what? They're learning. They're having fun as a shared event, and they're learning about some of these different locations and different pieces. And I love that show. It's like I haven't watched it.
I know. My husband and I watch it at least once a week.
It's addicting,
You
right?
know, the kid's gone.
You're like
But
$10,000 for that, or it's like, oh, that's only like
right.
75.
I gotta be
Like,
looking more when I'm at those places. I don't find those things. But yeah. That's cool. But yeah, so it really, we just have to be thinking non-program, just, where can you go? What can you do? How can you stir those things up? Um, but
I
yeah.
think too, real quick, just to interject. I mean,
Mhm.
anything of value takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yes.
And
So true.
and honestly, there's great. When I say this, when I was on this tour, so in 2019 when we kicked off Britfield and Lost Crown Book One in San
Mhm.
Diego, I drove 9,000 miles. I visited 23 states. I presented to over 200 schools in front of more than 40 to 50,000 students, and everything
Mm.
from huge auditoriums of 400 fourth through eighth graders to libraries to classrooms in Montana to Oaks Christian, one of the top private schools in Los Angeles. So I've seen it all, done it all, talked to the kids and everything. And I would be telling them
Mm.
that anything of value takes time. I say,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
might, we all have great ideas for things that we want to do when we
Mm.
grow up. And I said it could take you 3, 5, 10, even 20 years to realize that. And then I sit there
Mm.
and I tell them about Britfield, Lost Crown, how I had an idea and a doodle and a page outline. It took me 4 years, 2,500 hours to write it, and 10 years before I launched it. 10 hard years. Oh no.
Hmm.
There.
Oh, you're still there. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But I think, yeah, we live in this society that is so, instant, and
Yeah.
I've got to be able to do it tomorrow. But good things take time, and we have to remember that. And tomorrow isn't the end goal. Tomorrow's
No.
just one step towards the end goal.
And there's things where it will lead to, and it's interesting. And
Hmm.
all these research statistics are out there, but a lot of the top Fortune 100 companies are looking for students not only with creativity because they know it's the most important skill set, but they're looking for kids that have actually or applicants that actually play music, play musical at least one
Mm.
musical instrument, and can read music because they find that students that are able to do that are better leaders, better managers, better under crisis, better brainstormers, and can shift um, relatively smoothly when things change
Oh,
or programs change. All from a musical
yeah.
instrument, all from playing the piano, because it's the
Hmm.
way that you think. It's what it does for the mind. It's the way that you react. It's how it fires the synapses in your
Hmm.
brain from music. So just because your kid, played the trumpet for 4 years and well, that was a waste of money. You know what I mean? No, it wasn't. It was fantastic.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just saying, it's like you just don't know. I mean, you just don't know.
Right.
And
Hmm.
just like my story with the 12-year-old kid that wrote, James Bond, Eat Your Heart Out. You know what I mean? And
Right.
then fast forward 35 years later, and you have Britfield Lost Crown, 384 pages of a 12-year-old kid in England. Gee, did you find the
Right.
scenarios there? So
Uh-huh.
and now this book is being sold all over the world.
Yeah.
From and I always said that was from that seed that was planted. So
Wow, that's so cool. And I was telling Chad that I'm listening to the audiobook of that first one right now, and it is fascinating. Can you tell our readers just a little bit about the story, the plot line of that, and
yeah, it's a
what
lot
that
of fun,
story's
and
about?
it's interesting too because we're getting ready to launch book 4. This is Britfield and the Eastern Empire. This is actually um,
Ah.
it's an author's copy. It won't even be launched until July 2022, and that's Tom and Sarah. They're now 15 years old. That's the Hermitage, the famous museum in St. Petersburg,
Oh,
Russia.
yes.
So
Actually, I've
how
been
cool?
there. I
Yeah.
I
Oh,
I
isn't it?
spoke
Isn't
at
it the
a
most?
homeschool conference in Russia in
Did you? Oh, that's awesome.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah, isn't it? It's beautiful. It's, in my opinion, it's the most beautiful museum. Um, so anyway, so it's fun because I'm way down the series now, but because of the
Hmm.
movie, because we're going into pre-production of the first of 7 major motion pictures of Britfield
Yeah.
Lost Crown. So literally, I just 10 days ago, I went back to a finished movie script. Here's the actual movie script.
Hmm.
So it's 2 hours and 10-minute movie, and I went back and I wanted to do one more edit, one more polish
Hmm.
of the story. And it took me 10 days or 9 days. And I was
Wow.
like, wow, I did not expect that, like full time, just
Hmm.
um, tightening the scenes. But it's such a fun, fast-paced story, and it starts up in Yorkshire, Northern England. It's about Tom. He's 12 years old. He's been at Weatherly Orphanage for 6 years, kind of this miserable orphanage. Kids have to work all day. They call it the factory, and there's a lot of sort of underlines there. There's a reason that it starts up in Northern England for a lot of reasons. Industrial Revolution, hence the school system. There's a lot there. But anyway, and I always say it's not a story about an orphan; it's about getting out of the orphanage, you know. And so, you know, within 20% of the, and so during this course, as you're kind of coming into this world, what's kind of fun about it too is there's this thing called the book exchange, which you probably heard, you know, in listening. And and the owners, Mr. and Mrs. Grievous, awful, right? They take all the money for themselves, and they live in this beautiful Victorian house like 100 yards away. And so once a month, one of the orphans has to sneak into the Grievous's library, take one of the books they have and exchange it for a new one. And that's how they read and become educated. But what it does is it puts this high price on the value of literature and great literature. And I think Tom's returning the Count of Monte Cristo that they just got done reading. And again, that's a great shout out, and that whole storyline there. And there's a funny thing. Patrick, he's 16. He's the oldest and the wisest. He's like, no more Shakespeare. But
I laughed at that one.
It's something by Lewis, you know. So it does have a lot of fun humor and stuff. And Sarah's his best friend. And so long story short, you know, he's ready to get out of there. He hates the place, and oh
no, we're gonna lose him again. Hopefully not. It is a really, really good story. As we're
there we go. Yep. Am I back?
Yep. Okay. Yep. You're back.
So anyway, eventually all the orphans get together to help him rescue Sarah, who got caught outside and is in solitude for 30 days, if you can imagine, in this attic up in the top. Awful. And so all the orphans get together to help Tom and Sarah escape. And it's really cool because they're all risking their own, you know, lives, if you will, to help Tom and Sarah. But if just one of them can escape and get out, it's a victory for all of them. And it's and the whole theme of this is about family. And it's not just by birth or blood, but by often a bond that's even stronger than that. And that's what these orphans have. And so it's so powerful, and it so resonates. And so Tom eventually, you know, they escape but introduce or bring in Detective Gowerstone, who's renowned for capturing runaway orphans and lost children. And there's a whole backstory with that I don't want to give away. So now Tom and Sarah are really up against, you know, one of the greats, and they eventually are being chased to commandeer a hot air balloon and start flying all through England, Oxford, Windsor, London, and finally down to Canterbury Cathedral. So it's a 384-page book. It's fast-paced. It's exciting. We incorporate history, like I said, geography, art, architecture, literature, and really the main theme is family, the importance of family, what family means. It's just it really is. It's just a timeless, priceless story, a tonic that this generation needs. And really, what we're trying to do through the Britfield series is elevate literature out of the depths of sort of Harry Potter and witchcraft and gods and superheroes into something real and true, and honest.
Yeah, because really, when your kids listen to stories like this, they synthesize through those characters how to solve problems, how to, you know, to face life's hard events, and they can do it in a safe way, knowing that the outcome is going to be good. I mean, that hope is there because it's written in a way that the way you wrote it. Not all stories are like that anymore, though. Sometimes they can read so scared because maybe, you know, the heroine dies. You know, that's probably why they don't like Shakespeare.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty.
Everybody dies. But I've heard it said before that good children's literature allows our children to experience these heroic lifestyles, and kind of feel through those, that prepares them for later life and those decisions they're going to have to face and those hard things. And yet at the same time, there's an ending that is good, which we know with God, his ending's always good. But
sure. No, I'm not a realist. I mean, I've got wonderful, wonderful, heartfelt endings. But I love what you were saying, because that is how it's designed. See, the thing is the current literature out there. Let's be honest. About 90% of it, we're talking television, films, and literatures, witchcraft, demigods, superheroes, vampires, zombies,
right,
demigods. All of this is designed for three reasons. Number one, to disconnect your children from reality. Number two, to make them feel less than they are, right? Because if I was just Superman, if I could just fly, if I could just be a magician, if I just had magical powers, and really, is that what you want them desiring? And number three, it's introducing a lot of dark topics, dark subjects, cultism, all this other stuff that they don't really need to be exposed to. And the thing is like you just said with Tom and Sarah, they're constantly faced with problems, and they're constantly thinking about how to solve it. And it's very humorous and funny and very real. And sometimes, like they have the wrong answer, and they're like, well, we won't do that again, and sometimes like, oh, it worked.
Which is what we all do.
And it is. We call it stealth education. That's the thread that runs through these series. We're teaching kids, really, if you will, how to think and how to explore and how to discuss things and conversations and sometimes they get help from others. We also esteem adults as our main adults are wise and caring and good. They're not the bumbling idiots that most of these books make them out to be. There's a reverence and respect for those that are older. Professor Hainsworth, who they meet at Oxford, and he decides to help them. He's kind of this old, stuffy 70-year-old professor that's been there for like 40 years. And it starts out where he's got like just stacks of papers, and he's just grading and grading and grading. And he's like owed like 8 weeks of vacation. And so he's got, but he finally just is so moved by Tom's story, what they've gone through. He's like, I'm going to help you get to London. And so now you have this wonderful father figure. And yet, and then for Hainsworth, these sort of kids that he never had and stuff. And it's really just wonderful. But I'm using it as an example that there are bad guy adults, and there are good people adults, and the good people are caring and smart. And I love book 4. We don't have time to get into it, but Tom and Sarah are now 15 years old, and I always have major themes in the books, and they always take place over 7 days. And book 4, Britfield and Eastern Empire, it starts in Vienna, ends in Russia. We include 11 countries in book 4, if you can imagine, including Prague, Krakow, Warsaw, Berlin, the Baltic Sea, Estonia, even Budapest. It's very, very cool. And but they're now 15, so they're a little bit, rogue, a little off the reservation. Being 15, they think they know everything. And so one of the themes in this is decisions and consequences, and the decisions that we make and the consequences that happen. And sometimes you make the right decisions, and sometimes you make the wrong decisions, and these are the consequences. And it's not just for you, but sometimes a decision you make affects others. And that's a really powerful thread that's running through this as a sort of moral, subject, that one can discuss in book 4. Again, just a thread, it's not the main theme, but I'm very cautious with these books when I'm writing them, and I'm very attuned to 12 years old, and then book 2 they're 13, very little older, and then 14, a little older. And I always say that at that age, 12 to 13 is like a decade in children's age, right? 34 to 35, who cares? You know what I mean? 12 to 13, that's huge. 12 to 14, that's huge, right?
Yeah.
Because their development and what they're doing and what they're thinking and what, and so it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah. So, as you've been talking, especially with the ages, this creativity really is a lifelong skill that goes beyond school. And, how do you have any advice for parents as they're thinking about, how do I keep this going? How do I make sure we don't lose this? How do I allow or encourage my child in a way that they don't think that this is just a waste of time either? Because they can get a lot of ideas from culture and other things that, you're just wasting time spending it, free thinking and doing all these things. How do you value that enough in your home so that sticks with them?
I think a little goes a long way. I think it's balance, between sports and academics and creative pursuits, like the theater. is wonderful. Doesn't mean that they're going to be a professional actor. I think that's why we developed Britfield Lost Crown into a theatrical play, because we wanted to bring quality content back to the theater programs now and sort of undermine, if you will, the musicals, which, no offense, musicals are fine, but it's saturating like 80% of it. And then it alienates 80 to 90% of kids that want to go out just to theater. Not many guys want to go out
but they
to a
can't
musical.
sing. That's what my daughter was always. She was like, "Can I like do tryouts without singing?"
Yeah, and so yeah, I do. I think it's always progress. It's always a work in progress. It's organic in the sense that you're always sort of seeing what's the next move and what to do. It's being patient. It's taking time, and just seeing what sticks. When you were talking, I was thinking that one line that says, find what you love doing and you'll never work another day in your life. And that's what you're trying to do with your kids. Let them find out what they're good at. And it'd be great in a second to hear a little bit about what you just mentioned about one of your children and how he was sort of pigeonholed in school and now what he's doing today. You know what I mean?
Right.
And which is extraordinary. But I wanted to spend 1 minute just on the importance of creativity, just so your audience can sort of resonate with some of these statistics. This is a great quote by Sir Ken Robinson. One of the best TED Talks I've ever watched is called Are Schools Killing Creativity? It's a 2006 TED Talk, about 18 minutes with Sir Ken Robinson, who has since passed. And it is the most watched, downloaded TED Talk in history. And ask yourself why. And so some interesting statistics. There's a gentleman by the name of George Land. You probably have heard that before. And he was hired by the government to create a creativity test. They had the academic test, the analytical test. They needed something that could measure creativity. And it was very successful for the particular field that he was hired for. He decided to turn it in to the school system. And so he tested thousands of children starting at age 5. And so from the age 5 group, 98 out of 100 of those 5-year-olds tested off the charts. Little geniuses, brilliant little geniuses. This was just across the board. 5-year-olds just in general. 98 out of 100 of them, little geniuses. Tested that same group again when they were at 10, dropped down to 30%. Tested them again at 15, it dropped down to 12%. And so he found that basically schools were teaching creativity out of children.
Yep.
And a wonderful researcher by the name of Dr. Kim from William and Mary wrote a book called The Creativity Crisis. And she reviewed and researched over 300,000 students over a 20-year period and found that since the 1990s, schools have killed curiosities and passions, narrowed visions, lowered expectations, stifled risk-taking, destroyed collaboration, narrowed minds, killed deep thoughts and imagination, forced conformity, solidified hierarchy. Does that sound familiar? As a result, children have become less emotionally expressive, less energetic, less humorous, less imaginative, less talkative, less verbally expressive, less lively and passionate, and less perceptive. Fascinating. And here's a great quote by Sir Ken Robinson. Everyone has great creative capacities, but not everyone develops them. One of the problems is that our educational systems don't enable students to develop their natural creative powers. Instead, they promote uniformity and standardization. The result is that we're draining people of their creative possibilities and producing a workforce that's conditioned to prioritize conformity over creativity.
Absolutely.
So this is just some of the research, and the statistics that are out there. It's a very real threat, if you will. So on one side, we're in a creativity crisis, not just nationally, but globally. On the other side of it, creativity is the most important skill set in the world. You know what the 3 most important skills in the world are right now? Creativity, communication, storytelling. Isn't that interesting? Wow. But if you think about it, and I did on my own research, I'm actually getting a PhD, and so I do a lot of deep research. In fact, we actually, through my professor, I published a sort of a Harvard case study based on a gentleman that worked at, I can't give it away, but one of the largest entertainment companies in the world that do movies and have theme parks for 26 years. And it was quite fascinating. So we've done a lot of this deep research. But isn't that interesting when you think about communication? Isn't communication the most important thing? I mean, how many marriages fail? How many partnerships fail? How many businesses fail because of communication? And storytelling. Isn't storytelling one of the most important skill sets? I mean, whether you're telling,
Absolutely.
whether it's a
Yeah.
resume, which is telling a story, whether
It's
you're
how
being interviewed.
cultures survived for
Yeah.
decades and, hundreds of years. So they've passed their history on that way. And yeah, it gets to the person's heart versus just all the data. The data is so mixed up now that
Yeah.
you just don't even know what's true or not anymore.
We are interesting. We are in a creativity renaissance right now, which is exciting. And it's really because they've been trying to shove it in a box for so long, it sort of exploded. And they often say that the new MBA is the MFA, Masters in Fine Arts, which is very cool. But it is the time of the artist, if you will, the creatives, because the creatives are the ones that are the entrepreneurs. They're the ones that are out there building the companies and finding solutions to problems and starting something out of nothing. And that's exciting.
Yeah, that is truly exciting. And yes, and our kids have the ability. And I know parents, you may be thinking, well, my child has this struggle or that struggle, but you can cultivate creativity in a child, that has any struggle. It really, truly, you can, and get them, ahead, if you want to think of it from that way, so far above their peers, especially just by keeping them at home and keeping them out of that system that Chad was just talking about. I mean, just the negation of that programming puts them years ahead in those abilities and those life skills. Just because they can explore, they have that time and that ability to figure out who they are, what they like, and kind of think outside the box and not have anybody telling them all the time what to do.
I've got a great story to end with, although we can
Yeah.
continue, but to me, it exemplifies everything we've talked about today. It's probably just about one of my favorite stories I've ever heard, and it was actually from Sir Ken Robinson from his TED Talk, "Our Schools Killing Creativity." But it's based on a woman by the name of Gillian Lynn, and someone might know her. She was a famous choreographer for Cats in Phantom of the Opera.
Oh, yes.
And interviewed her, and when she was young, 8, 9, or 10, she was just having a really hard time in school, fidgety and late with homework and causing disruptions. And finally, the teacher, got the parents and said, we think she might have a learning disorder. You better take her to a specialist. Isn't that just the typical thing for them to do? And so the mom, Mrs. Lynn, took her daughter, Jillian, to a specialist, and they sat there on a couch, for about 30 minutes, and they were talking, and the psychologist said, Jillian, I just want to talk to your mom for a couple of minutes. Just sit there, and we'll be back in a few minutes. And before he left the room, he turned on the radio, and they walked out. And Mrs. Jillian says, what's wrong with her? And he goes, just hold on, watch for a minute. And within like 30 seconds, she got up and started to move to the music. And he goes, Miss Lynn, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. Take her to a dance class. And so she did. And she goes, how was it? And she goes, it was amazing. She goes, I was in a room of people like me, people that had to move to think, and they did tap and ballet and jazz. And she eventually auditioned for the Royal Ballet. She was accepted. She became a soloist, had an amazing career in the ballet as a soloist for the Royal Ballet. She actually started her own Julian Lynn dance studio. She taught thousands and thousands of people the craft of dancing. She eventually met Andrew Lloyd Webber. She's been involved in some of the most successful musicals in history, has brought fun and excitement to millions of people, and is a multi-millionaire. And someone else might have told her to sit down and put her on medication. And I think it exemplifies.
That is such a perfect story. Yeah, absolutely. And just the change in these child's demeanor. I've had one student who tried out for my performance team just this last year. Her sister was on the team the year before, but her mom kept her back because she had to take dyslexia classes. And mom allowed her to join the team and stopped. She's like, well, we're just going to put the money into Ariel instead. And this girl has, her life has changed. She is just a different demeanor. It just makes me cry because she I mean, she's realizing, that she has some gifts, and it's not just about the things that she doesn't do good. And so what a good way to end our conversation. Yes, absolutely. We got to focus on those things that they excel at, or they have that inner drive about, and that really does tap into their creative, expression as well. We got to let them express themselves, not just the way we want them to, but the way that they are wired to.
Yeah, and again, I think it's good to have rules. It's good to have the discipline and the format. It's good to have a taste of each subject, such as the sciences and history. And
absolutely.
I mean, I myself love history, and it's like, I know that says history. Anyone that says history is boring doesn't know history. You know what I mean? Because it's like, are you kidding me? It's like stunning. Like some of the stuff that I've read, like in history, like you can't make that stuff up. I would write that in fiction, and people are no way. You know what I mean? Like you've gone way over. But you just don't know, I mean, I think it's good to have that sort of balance and stuff. And then one or two of those things are really going to stick. And that's when you start to funnel into it. You know what I mean? Whatever hits them, whether it's the art or the writing or the music, it's just like, then put the time and the effort into it, put the resources into it. And like I said, maybe 3 or 4 years go by and suddenly they just drop it, or they're not interested in it, but you do not know what's going to transpire from that. But what you've done is you've given them a well-balanced education. You've given them an opportunity to see and do a lot of great things, and you've given them lots of experiences. And that's the foundation of any healthy life, period, because they're going to be pulling on that for the rest of their life.
Yeah, that's a great summary. Yes, absolutely. So, yes, your website is britfield.com, and those stories or your books can be found just about anywhere, audiobook as well. And then the movie that's coming out eventually that you're working on. And so, but you were telling me that if our viewers haven't experienced any of the other, I definitely start with book 1. And has a Christmas story involved in it. So, so it's a great time for a holiday read for you. So, and that book is Britfield and the Lost Crown. So, yeah,
they're wonderful. Awesome. They're wonderful holiday gifts. They're wonderful gifts. I mean, it's interesting. Our youngest reader is 7, our oldest reader is 93, and 55% of our audience globally are adults. And we receive feedback almost daily from people all around the world that just love the book and the series and resonate with it. So it is kind of cool. So it's not, it's great for kids. That's middle school. It's kind of geared towards that, but it's great for adults too. So
great for everybody. Oh yes, I've been enjoying the story greatly. So. So, well, thank you so much, Chad, for being on the show. It was an enlightening and wonderful discussion. I just appreciate you taking your time out to share with us today.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So everyone, thank you for joining us here on the show. You've been kind of quiet, but I know it's always lunch hour. So, but I've seen you popping in and off during our conversation. So thanks for joining us live. This will be a podcast. It'll come out next Tuesday. And next week, we're going to talk about homeschooling with what you know, meeting unique needs on an uncertain journey. So you'll want to join us for that discussion again next week. So, and make sure to check out everything else at spedhomeschool.com. We got lots of things coming up, plus some new things that we're launching in January and our holiday party in December. So join us for that. But thank you all. And thanks again, Chad. And we'll see you all here again next week on Empowering Homeschool Conversations. Take care and God bless. Bye, everybody.
This has been Empowering Homeschool Conversations, provided by Sped Homeschool, a nonprofit that empowers families to home educate diverse learners. To learn more, visit spedhomeschool.com.